I'm Laura Bonnell, and this is the Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast coming to you from Detroit. Please subscribe and even rate and comment on our podcasts when it moves you. I learn something new with every podcast, and I'm always inspired by the people that are showcased here. We don't give medical advice. You need to connect with your doctor for that. I hope that this Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast educates you and sparks some volunteering or advocacy. The CF community needs people like you. Thanks to our sponsors, Viatris and Vertex, for their support. It is always good to talk with innovators on this podcast, the people who don't just follow the science, but they also push it forward, which is wonderful. And today we are honored to welcome someone whose work has changed lives in the cystic fibrosis community and far beyond. And I'm talking about Dr. Jeffry Weers. Delightful conversations with him. He is an accomplished pharmaceutical scientist with more than 35 years of experience designing and developing novel drug delivery systems, which we are going to talk about, taking ideas from the early concept all the way through regulatory approval. I think he has something like 60 patents pending or 30. Anyways, he has a lot. And his career includes groundbreaking work on formulations, biologics, small molecules, and combination products, all backed by an extensive patent portfolio and its remarkable publication record. He is also not only known for innovation, but also for building and leading multidisciplinary teams that make these innovations successful and make them work. And he will talk about the challenges also, because it's also real important to talk about your challenges and how you grew from that. And one of the most impactful contributions, if you're a CF caregiver, you will be grateful for, is the Toby Podhaler. Dr. Weers is responsible for that. So we're going to talk about this device that fundamentally changed how inhaled antibiotics reach the lungs. Dr. Jeffry Weers, thank you so much for doing this podcast with us. It's great to have you. There's so much to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. It's always a pleasure to talk to patient advocacy groups. Gives you a lot of inspiration.
Oh, well, thanks. I feel the same way. I feel that it's just incredible to talk with scientists who are making things happen, not just for the CF community, but for really the world and many diseases. So thanks right off the bat for all you do. And off the bat, we'll be talking baseball in a little bit and about the Toby Podhaler. But first, I wanted to ask you, why did you choose science? What intrigued you right away?
I guess as a little kid, I was running around asking my mom lots of questions. Used to annoy her probably a little bit, but I just was always very inquisitive and was attracted to nature and attracted to learning. And so, I mean, it's really funny. My kids, when we bought a house one time, the realtor was, because they're exactly the same way. They're all sort of scientists. And the realtor said, your kids are so into every little thing out in nature. You know, they'd grab things and go back onto the microscope and basically, so budding little scientists in our house. And it was the same way with me growing up.
That's so cool. I mean, I think we all started out kind of knowing what we wanted to do. It's just wherever we're drawn, but it is always interesting to ask. And that's fantastic about your kids. So did you say they're all scientists now?
To different degrees. One is a critical care nurse. One is essentially in vet school. And the other one just loves nature. So
that's fantastic. Well, great job. And I also wanted to ask you, you've been in this for 35 years. When you look back, what has either been the most exciting project or chapter in your career?
Well, I think Toby Podhaler sits right up there, just because of the CF community is just so awesome, and being able to interact directly with patients along the way and to hear their stories and get to meet them. And the team that I had at the time working on that program was just a great team. I had another one that was also equally exciting, I would say, which was we were working on a program called partial liquid ventilation, where essentially babies that are born prematurely receive a liquid fluorocarbon into their lungs, and that helps them to breathe better. And the very first patient that we did on that technology, I got to meet her on her first birthday,
Wow.
and got to hold her on her first birthday, which was very rewarding. That she was there to begin with, and that I got to interact with her.
That is wonderful. I mean, you never forget that stuff. That is a great story. And for anyone who doesn't know what the Toby podhaler is, it's a different method of taking tobramycin, and it's faster. It's not the inhaled. That took forever for the kids. So that Toby podhaler was freedom, not only for my girls, but so many parents. When we talk about it, it was such freedom. And so we did want to go talk baseball, because your YouTube video, which the link is in our show notes, it's fantastic. It's a great way that you explained science via baseball. So can you walk us through the physics that you explained in your video about, the particle aerodynamics and everything? It really just brought it to a level that I completely understood.
Sure. I mean, the big thing about Toby podhaler is that if you go back and you look at all of the products that are in the dry powder space in portable inhalers, what you're really trying to do is to deliver drugs that are very potent. In the case of Toby podhaler, we had to get into that same portable inhaler a drug that is 1,000 times less potent. So we had to get a whole lot more drug in there. So we had to redesign the entire product and thinking about it a little bit differently. And so one of the key pieces that Laura was just talking about there was, how do we increase the efficiency of drug delivery into the lungs? And the whole analogy of with the baseball comes back to, if you have a solid baseball, it is a very dense material relative to a child's wiffle ball. And so that solid baseball will move much more quickly in an airstream than does the porous little wiffle ball. And so that makes it so that you get impaction in the back of the throat, as opposed to being able to make this bend coming into the lungs. Whereas the porous particle, the small porous particles that we created for Toby podhaler, will in essence bypass that deposition in the mouth and throat, make that bend and get all the way down into the lungs with higher efficiency. That, coupled with a few other pieces, including a much, much higher drug loading, and increased film mass, and delivering a couple of capsules, gets you to this dose that's just 1,000 times higher.
Which is very cool and unrelated to the Bonnell Foundation, even though Emily is my daughter. She separately did a video with your Toby podhaler that shows people how to properly use it. And I actually learned a lot from that as well. So it is really cool. And so tell us how you figured out that process. I mean, it was probably a lot of work. And again, you just touched about some of it, but what was that process?
Well, interestingly enough, that other product that we talked about earlier, the liquid vent product, we were looking for a way to stabilize particles for drug delivery within that liquid, which is a liquid fluorinated material. And so we came up with this whole concept of that if we made a dispersion of particles within that liquid where the particles were hollow and porous, that the liquid could penetrate into those particles and create what we called a homodispersion, where the continuous phase on the outside of the particles and what's inside the particles was actually the same. And so that enabled them to be dispersed back down into primary particles very easily. So to get there, we created an emulsion of an oil and a water, kind of like milk, and in terms of droplets. And those droplets, when we heat them up into an airstream, what ends up happening is that those oil droplets create pores within the structure and allow us to create these very fine particles that are now like a child's wiffle ball. And so we do that by a spray drying process. So we create that feedstock with an emulsion in it. Those droplets create that porous structure.
And did you have any idea of the impact that it would have on the CF community and how excited parents and patients would be?
We were hopeful. But I mean, obviously you never know. I've been developing products for a long time. Some have hit and done really well. Some have gotten there and we completely sort of misdiagnosed the market. So you're always trying to project out into the future. So you're never quite sure by the time you get there, which is usually a decade later, whether or not the market dynamics will still be the same.
And isn't this also a great product too? Because if I'm correct, you don't have to store it in the refrigerator, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the beautiful things I think that was really great for patients at the time was that, yeah, you don't need to store it in the refrigerator. You don't need a power source, and the inhaler is very portable. So I think there were some advertisements at the time that said, basically wireless drug delivery. And so the patients could take, they don't need the compressor, et cetera, with the nebulizer. So they could take it in their car, or, it sort of freed them up to go hiking or do something else that they might want to do in terms of getting out of the house without having to worry about taking their medicine.
Right. So easy to transport. Another huge benefit. And like I said, time, the time that it took compared to all the inhaled medications that they have, that's also another great factor. Have you done anything? Well, you kind of just alluded to that, but have you done things that didn't work and I'm sure you did, and you had to start over and then you perfected it?
That's a good question. It's kind of an evolving science all the time. Even with Toby Podhaler, I mean, there are ways to make that a better product today. Unfortunately, the regulatory pathways to doing things like that are very long. So oftentimes, even if we know how to do things better, we don't get the opportunity. I mean, I think there's a couple things like that I'm working on with some folks today. Inhaled insulin is probably one of those. I worked at a company called Inhale, where we were working on inhaled insulin as the first product that came to market. And, it had some flaws to it. The inhaler was relatively large. The way that the material was dosed in terms of units or in terms of milligrams versus units of insulin, there were several things that could be done better. And so it's always, when you go back, it's like, how can I make this better? How can I make this better? And you get that opportunity in life cycle management oftentimes, to do that. I mean, we're sort of also working on sort of doing asthma drugs in a better way with much higher efficiency of delivery, and much lower variability in dosing. And we've come up with new inhalers and new ways of making particles that make that happen. But again, trying to get those into the market. Some of the first concepts of that are actually now making to the market in Breztri and Bevespi Aerosphere and some of those products, which go back to our original meter dose inhaler products that we were doing in liquid fluorocarbons back in the day. So it's also nice to see those products now finally make it their way around and into the market.
Absolutely. And If we can go back a second, I had a couple questions, one on the inhaled insulin. But first, if you could make the Toby Podhaler better, what would you do? Because it seems pretty perfect.
Well, probably the biggest thing is the need to take 4 capsules twice daily. So that's a lot of still a lot of powder to inhale. So one of the things that we've done is to be able to take the space between the particles away. So and how they pack within a powder. And so by doing that, that allows us to get from 4 capsules down to 1 capsule. And you may have to take a couple inhalations on that 1 capsule, but you take 2 inhalations per the 4 capsules. So it would cut the number of inhalations from 8 to about 2.
Yeah, I guess we can always perfect everything, as I think about stuff. But the inhaled insulin, I have not heard of that. So is that on the market yet, or is that still in the, you're still working on that?
The original product was a product called Exubera, which made it to the market, I believe, in 2006.
Wow.
It was taken off the market shortly thereafter for a variety of reasons. Currently, there is a new product on the market from a company called Mankind that is still not doing very well in the marketplace. But we're still hopeful that we can perfect that and get the cost of goods in the right place to make that a successful product. But patients, a lot of patients who, especially those that are needle phobic, tend to love that technology. The access to it just hasn't really occurred yet for many physicians in terms of prescribing.
So it works in the same way and it will just be as effective. And would it also work for CF diabetes?
Yeah, so it's a mealtime insulin, so it's not a basal insulin that just sort of takes you through the night. So this is controlling essentially your blood sugar as you're eating a meal, and so that's one of the reasons that it's not used as probably as much as that it's so you still have to take needles and still have to do things for your basal insulin, but there are a lot of potential advantages to doing it via inhalation in terms of hypoglycemia or weight gain, etc. But the diabetes market is a tough one. There are lots of new products with the GLP-1s, etc., that are out there that have had a tremendous impact in that space as well. But yes, to your question, it could be used by people with CF.
That's exciting. And I was going to ask you about that. If you're excited about that GLP, that whole area, that's new for weight loss and for people, I would think like you're always cheering everybody on because it's exciting as a scientist to see other people and drugs succeed with their research.
Yeah, I mean, it's an active area of research for inhalation as well in terms of inhaling the GLP-1s. I think we actually ran studies back in the 90s on inhaling GLP-1. Still searching for what the big advantage would be there to inhaling with GLP-1. We have some ideas of that you may be able to use this when you're getting off of the injectables to maintain so you don't put the weight right back on. So we're looking at some indications along those lines for GLP-1.
When you're talking to scientists that are just coming up, I met some at the NACFC, and it's exciting as they start out. We're in a different place. We have the Genome Project, right? We've had that now for, I don't know, what is it, 30 years? But it's a different time. We have modulators now. What are your thoughts for the new scientists coming up?
The final 10%, no one left behind. I mean, that's where it's all at. We need these therapies. We just need to make the lives better for Emily Kramer and others that can't benefit today from the modulators, and the modulators have been fantastic at changing up the lives of CF patients, and I'm so happy for all of them.
And Emily Kramer, who you were referring to, is of Emily's entourage and a friend of ours. And I would say the same, there's so many people, Natalie, Eric's daughter, who I know, so many people. How close or far away are we, do you think?
I think the progress is being made. We're not quite there yet. So we were working on a project where we were trying to completely replace the CFTR protein that forms ion channels and transports chloride ions across the epithelial membrane with a completely synthetic ion channel made from small molecules. The first molecule that we were trying didn't work exactly like we had hoped. Some of that we think has to do with the fact that when you're coming from essentially the airways as opposed to coming from the blood side, that the distribution and getting the drug where you need it because of all the mucus and everything else that is in these patients' lungs is a bit more challenging, and it may take longer in terms of a study to be able to see the benefits. But the good news with the studies that we were doing is that we were able to essentially decrease the mucus burden in the patients pretty dramatically, and we saw that with imaging, but it didn't translate directly into an improvement in a clinical endpoint like FEV1 yet. And again, that may be a trial design issue. That may be we just didn't look at enough patients. It was kind of underpowered. But in any case, we're not deterred. We're still moving forward. So this is a project that I was working on with Marty Burke at the University of Illinois and with Mike Welsh at the University of Iowa. Mike, big name, huge name in this field.
Yeah, just did a podcast with him actually. But yeah, he's fantastic as well.
We've identified some alternative molecules that get around some of the issues in the airways that we think may have contributed to the lack of efficacy that we saw. And so that's moving forward, and that molecule, the new molecule, will have much better physical properties to enable us to more effectively target the airways that we're looking for. So the process continues to move forward for us. Same thing on the side of gene therapy tremendous progress being made, tremendous progress on gene editing, et cetera. So, there's just great stuff going on. And we're moving, I would say, collectively as a group as fast as we can, but with, purpose for finding a solution for the final 10%.
That's so wonderful to hear. Every time, I talk to anybody about it, it's good to hear updates, and it gives people hope, and they need the hope. So thank you for all that you're doing. And I just wondered, what is the camaraderie of all the scientists? Do you get on Zoom calls and all talk or email each other every once in a while? Like, as a reporter, it was always like we would talk about whatever, this press conference or how so-and-so, oh my gosh, they don't know what they're doing or whatever it was, you're just talking amongst yourself. And then the nonprofits will all talk as a group like, oh, we need to see this change in laws or whatever as far as advocacy goes. What kind of conversations do you have? Like, do you call up Paul Quinton and say, hey, what's going on?
Well, I've had the pleasure to work with the CF Foundation for a long, long time, back with Bonnie Ramsey many, many years ago, and J.P. Clancy and a lot of the folks at the CF Foundation. That's a tremendous organization, and one that, CF community has done so well in advocating for their patients and in getting new treatments, et cetera. And a lot of that has to do with that foundation and the people that make up the foundation. So yeah, we get excited when we talk about things, and undeterred, I think is the key word there, because we understand how science works. Science is kind of like baseball. It's quite a bit of failure and a little bit of success. But each piece of failure, I don't really look at it as failure. I look at it as learning that pushes us to closer to coming up with solutions that are meaningful.
Which is a great way to look at it. And did you have a baseball career?
No, not really. I played baseball in college a little bit and hurt my arm. I was a pitcher, but yeah, it was like graduate school, baseball. I think I'll go to graduate school.
Thankfully for us, yes, that was a great choice. But that is a career. That is like everything is part of our journey. And look how it's played in science with your explanation. And again, I encourage everyone to go to show notes and watch that video. It's a great video. You have so many patents, right? You have like 60, I read. So what's either, I don't know if you call it storage or what patents have you used? Do you still have a lot you're planning on for the future?
Yeah, I mean, every time you're working on a new program or it's important to try and patent it so that you have exclusivity so that you can get funding. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, it's been a focus of mine throughout the years. Each patent is driving towards either a new technology or a new product in one way or another. So yeah, I think I have at the moment about 30 patents pending.
Wow.
So things continue to move forward, and we're obviously continuing to look for ways to improve upon what we do.
That is a lot of balls up in the air. That's a lot of thinking and planning for the future. What, if you care to share, do you have concerns about science now? I know Dr. Francis Collins, formerly of the NIH, is worried about the future of science because it doesn't have it's not like it used to be. Some people are scared about science or negative about science, and he's pushing the science is good, which I love and participate in. But are you concerned for the future?
It's hard not to be. I mean, I've seen already in some of the projects I'm working on with folks the negative impact of funding being frozen or um, the whole granting process in terms of how money is distributed. It's kind of slowed down. It's even slowed down um, a couple of the startups that I've been working with in terms of getting their financing, in terms of just also the uncertainty around the economy, et cetera. That also contributes with the tariffs, et cetera, in terms of folks not wanting to make the investments. And so you see a lot of investments in sort of second rounds of things that people already have going, but it's much harder to get the financing to start things at the moment. So yeah, it's having an impact. But things are cyclical in this industry, and oftentimes we've gone through these sort of lulls before. So I'm hopeful that this will all settle down and turn around and get back. In terms of the negative perception of science in general and vaccines and all of that, that saddens me a little bit because probably the biggest, best way of taking care of infectious disease is with a vaccine. And I think there's a whole lot of sort of things that are said that are not quite true about vaccines, and so hopefully um, the community will rally and come back and stronger than ever.
Absolutely. And I do love your optimism and agree. We just got to keep on keeping on. Because we certainly don't want it to have any impact on the rare disease community and cures and medications and things like that. And I would hope that everyone agrees with that. Can we talk about your farm? You have a farm, which is really cool. And I bet that all your kids love it. Is that a place where you can kind of brainstorm or maybe just relax and think about science?
Well, it's relatively new. So we just I semi-retired and moved up to Bainbridge Island, which is just off of a little island just off of Seattle. It's just a small hobby farm, a couple acres. We hope to. We don't have any animals other than chickens at this point in time and dogs, but they're coming. We go visit the neighbors' donkeys every day. They're fantastic.
Wow.
But yeah, we're still getting sort of into the into the farm feel. My family, when I was a kid, my grandparents had a farm that I spent a lot of time on. So it's something that's in my blood, I guess, a little bit. And we love gardening and all of that. So yeah, I mean, it's a nice, relaxing place. We get up in the morning and we walk around, and it's just like, I can't believe we're here. You know, the beach is 600 steps away,
Wow.
and the forest is, a couple hundred steps away. So you can go walk in the forest or go to the beach, just equally easily.
That sounds great. And I love a garden. I go simple on the gardening. Tomatoes. I mean, nothing that takes a ton of work. What else do we do? Green peppers, little things, whatever, basil, that kind of thing. But the other question I wanted to ask you is about AI. Are you like some people are super concerned about it? You're very worried, and others are like, oh, we just have to figure out how to use it. Do you see it being beneficial in science?
Well, it can be beneficial. I mean, for example, when our patients get imaged, oftentimes you're looking for things that with the naked eye, it's really hard to see with imaging. There have been lots of advances in imaging in terms of what we call functional respiratory imaging, for example, which combined the image with computational fluid dynamics, in other words, that we use to sort of design airplanes and other things. So some pretty high-tech engineering science to really begin to pull out of those images intricacies that are important for seeing things like the changes in mucus burden or how many mucus plugs you have. And so that's having a really tremendous impact. It's still not a viable endpoint for FDA, but we learn from it tremendously. Even in the program that we just had, we learned quite a bit. And the images were all processed with AI, et cetera. So yeah, I mean, in some places, I think AI can be very, very helpful in terms of machine learning. I worry about other pieces of it in terms of, replacing people to do some tasks. I mean, yesterday I was doing some headshots, and so I used AI to do that. And then from at the end, I didn't have to go see a photographer. I didn't have to do this. I didn't have to do that. And so I worry about, the impact that's going to have on people's livelihoods and all of that. And I worry that where AI is probably going to have its biggest impact is in things that really aren't all that important. Yeah, AI can potentially on the diagnosis side of the world can really be very helpful in terms of looking at big amounts of data very quickly and finding the patterns in that data. It can do a better job than I can at doing that. So yeah, I mean, it has its pluses and minuses.
It is. It's good to think about. And thanks for sharing your personal side about the farm, too. I really appreciate that. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention, maybe that we didn't talk about that you're working on or that's coming up that you're excited about?
I mean, another area that we didn't talk about that I think is an area that still needs attention in the CF community and is still getting attention. I don't mean to be negative in that sense, is we worried for a long time with Toby Podhaler about the impact of infectious disease. And a lot of CF patients once they're on modulators, are not necessarily as concerned about their infectious disease piece, in spite of the fact that the modulators don't necessarily solve that problem. And so there's still work to be done there with respect to finding combinations of drugs and or regimens of anti-infectives or new ways of approaching anti-infective, the killing in terms of biofilms, et cetera. There's a lot of exciting research in that area that I think is still important, and I sort of want to ring the bell that we shouldn't forget modulators are great for some pieces, but the progression of some of the disease there and some of the comorbidities is still really critical for all of the CF community. And so I think that's an area that I'm still thinking about a lot.
That's a great point, because we do talk about that all the time, even amongst other nonprofits and people with CF, that yes, it's a fabulous drug that fixes the underlying condition, but it isn't the cure. And my kids are still getting sick, and other people are still getting sick and have battles. And is it phage therapy or is it antibiotics, or are we still... I feel like we still maybe don't know the answer. And phage, it seems like some doctors are like, yay, phage therapy. And others are like, let's do antibiotics for a year.
Yeah, I think phage therapy has promise, but like any new technology, it's still working the kinks out. I think there's a whole lot of gains to be made of thinking about, even with the medicines that we do have, of how to use them more properly in terms of, again, the regimen by which you use them to make them the most effective. One of the problems that we have is that from a regulatory perspective of how do you get new anti-infectives approved in terms of showing efficacy and being able to ethically be able to run trials with a placebo control. And so that's an area where I wish the FDA would give a little and basically enable different ways of looking at essentially running those sorts of trials. They pretty much won't let us run non-inferiority trials to get new drugs out there that would enable us to study them in combination, et cetera, a little bit easier. So if I had one hope, I would hope that that we can find a way to sort of relax those standards as to how we get a new anti-infective approved, because we need more and different anti-infectives that will enable us to really study them.
Well, the word is out now, and we are all going to focus on that and help you to propel that wish. We'll put it out into the universe, and then all the other nonprofits will talk about it too, because that is a great point and very important. And, you know, when parents and advocates, caregivers go talk to the doctors who give advice to the FDA, it's helpful. We know that it helps. So this is a great thing that you've now put out there.
Powerful.
So we're going to work on that. We'll keep you posted.
Great.
Well, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was very enjoyable. Thanks for having me. And let's go get that 10%.
Absolutely. Thanks for all you've done and all you're doing.
All right.
The original music in this podcast is performed by Kevin Allen.
It's not complicated.
Who happens to have cystic fibrosis.
We all got our worries and fears. I know it's got you frustrated, but loving you is so alright.
This has been the Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast. For more information and to learn more about the Bonnell Foundation, visit our website at thebonnellfoundation.org. That's the BONNELL Foundation.org. This podcast was sponsored by Vertex Pharmaceutical, The Science of Possibility, and Viatris. It was produced by Jag and Detroit Podcasts. Follow our show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening right now.